Setting up on my board, I looked back to Gary, who I could only just see waving an encouraging arm in the air. I looked toward the land and could see two surfers about halfway between me and the crowd, who from my vantage point looked like a massive flesh-toned blur. I looked to Gary once more and spoke what I fully expected to be the last words of my life: "Thanks, and I love you." Of course, there was no way he heard me, but I had to say it anyway. I then turned the nose of my board toward Hawaii, flattened out, and began to paddle my arms for all I was worth. The crowd's roar soon vanished, but I didn't stop. I kept going out farther and farther until I was nearly to the drop-off where the ocean floor suddenly drops. It's an area even the big ships avoid, because the ocean is so unpredictable there. Watching out to sea at the black wall that was the storm, I read the surface of the ocean. I knew almost exactly when and where the low ocean would hit that underwater cliff. What happens is right before it hits the cliff wall, there is a suction effect, which can pull you down. I've heard of several people who were killed being out there at the wrong time. However, if you know what you are doing and you are positioned just right, after the ocean sucks you down, it will eventually spit you back out. That is what I was hoping would happen. There was no way Scotty and Chad would come out so far. Only a lunatic would risk being swept out to sea. Well, label me a lunatic then. Sliding back and dropping the tail of my board, I held on with my legs dangling in the water. I was still belly to the deck and had made myself into an untethered buoy, which would be grabbed and pulled under. No sooner had I got into passion than I felt the pull. I sucked in a quick lung full of air and held onto my board, as it was the only thing that would save me now. I was down a long time. Too long. My lungs ached for fresh air and my ears felt like they were going to rupture under the pressure, but I couldn't risk letting go of my board to equalize my ear pressure. What seemed like forever, I felt my downward pull change as I was fired upwards like a missile. Seconds later, my board and I were launched into the air. I gasped in fresh oxygen as I looked down and prepared to hit the top of the wave. If I didn't hit just right, that would be the end of Alvin Hollow. I hit the wave feet first and screaming like a wounded animal as I fought against the power of the ocean to pull myself up while attempting to force the nose of my board down. Before I knew it, I was up and moving fast. I was already several stories and yet the wave was still growing. I hadn't chosen the perfect wave. Like an unspoken agreement, King Neptune had understood what I had intended and sent me a killer wave. It was the wave of a lifetime. The kind of wave people hope and pray for but never get. To anyone who hadn't spent their entire life on the ocean, it would have surely been a killer wave. For me, and my less than perfect leg, it was surely going to be the death of me. With tears streaming down my face, I set my eyes forward and attempted to either tame the wave, or die trying. It was the longest and scariest run of my life. As I rode the wave, the pain left me. It was just me, my board and the bucking, violent waters beneath me. Now you are going to think I am crazy, that I have completely lost my mind when I tell you what happened next, but I swear to you that it is 100% true. I felt a hand on my right shoulder and when I turned my head, I saw my father on my board, directly behind me just as he used to do when I was a very young boy. "Loosen your toes," John said. "That a boy. Get that but down and bend your knee. You're doing great, son." I looked back at him again, just to be sure he was really there. "Alvin, keep your eyes forward. Get ready for the rise. Now lean into it. Lean, Alvin. Lean." I was leaning so far forward, I was almost parallel to my board. "Get your arms back. Hold it. And cut now. That's my boy. Now bring it back around and set yourself up for. Look out, it's breaking high. Get yourself in position. You're too high. Get that nose down. Alvin, get that nose down." I was half a second slow and ended up out of position as the wave began to break above me, engulfing me in the largest tube I had ever surfed. If you have never surfed a tube, you probably cannot understand what it is like. Most of the time you cannot see anything but water in all directions. You just have to point your board and pray you emerge before the tube swallows you. When the only way out seemed closed, that's when I began to realize that maybe this was it for me. Maybe this was going to be the end for real. I've said that before, but this time I was sure. I began to imagine that stories would be told for years to come, about me, and people will tell how they were there the day Alvin Holloway disappeared within a tube and was never seen again. They would probably rename the competition in my honor and erect some memorial that in a few years would be just another ignored landmark on the boardwalk for the seagulls to poop on. Just as I was about to give myself to the wave by cutting to the left into the wave, I again heard John, soft and very close, "Alvin, you need to get yourself out of here." I shook my head. "I can't." "Yes, you can." I don't want to." My tears were mingling with the seawater as I saw John's face in the wave. "Alvin, you need to get out of here now. I want you to get yourself out of here now." "Dad, I was blubbering. Tigerfish, you have so much life left. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but the love of your life is standing on the beach right now. Soon you are going to fall in love, and one day marry her, and have beautiful children with her. But you have to get yourself out of here now. Please, son, I need you to get yourself out of here and live." I hadn't thought about what I was doing, I just reacted as I slid my bad leg back and curled my toes over the right edge of my board. At the same time, I slid my other foot as far forward as it would go. I then stretched one arm forward and the other back, as I got very low to my board. I tucked my chin to my chest, rolled my eyes forward, while my toes curled over the nose of my board. I was in essence doing a full split on top of my board, making myself as low as possible. The speed I picked up was incredible. Later I would learn that when I emerged from the tube I was clocked at 53 knots, just 1.10 knots shy of the world record. As I emerged, I heard John cheer as if from a great distance, "Good save, son. Good save." When I came out, the cheers of the spectators suddenly assaulted my ears, but I wasn't done. Pulling my left leg back, I was able to turn into the wave, then cut right and putting myself back on top of the wave. For a split moment, I saw Scotty and Chad on the backside of the wave, coming up from their duck dive under it. They hadn't caught a wave yet, they were too busy watching me. I was cutting left and right, kind of showboating. Then as I read that the wave was quickly losing its fierceness, I leaned into my board, cut left real sharp, brought the nose up and launched myself into the air. I'm told that I was at least 30 feet above the wave when I did a flip and then corkscrewed back down to the wave. I rode the dying wave as I looked up into the sun and smiled at John. "Thanks, Dad." I could hardly hear or understand the announcer. He was so ecstatic that he was shouting into the microphone. I picked up bits and pieces there like, "I saw it and I still don't believe it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how it's done." On and on he went, trying to be heard over the crowd. Not waiting to hear how my two opponents were faring, I again laid myself upon my board and began to paddle parallel to the shore in the direction I'd left Gary. However, Gary was nowhere to be seen. I was sure he would see me coming and meet me, but he didn't. Away from the competition area, I turned my board and headed inland, sure I'd see Gary waiting there. However, he wasn't there either, but there was someone there I recognize. Still a good 300 feet from shore, I had zero doubt of who it was.